Hello and welcome to another LOC Fantasy Show. It's Naithan Stubbs here, back with you again, trying to help you win your fantasy matchups. It's a pretty glorious day here, despite what the weather forecast told us. That's par for the course in the UK. And of course, I've got the great company of my trusted friend and co-host, Chris Leach. How's it going, Chris?
Good, yeah, very well, thank you. Say, all is well here, and to be quite honest with you, as we descend into the depths of the autumn here in the UK. This is about as good as it gets for us. We're really looking forward to week 3. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we've had a bit of a summer swan song, it feels like, this week. But as you say, this is going to be the last of it. It's very much going to turn after this week, you get the sense of. And that's why we love NFL coming back, because we have that to keep us occupied through the autumn and some of the winter. So, firstly, apologies for no recap and waivers show this week. Just schedule-wise, myself and Chris were both a bit busy and not feeling too great on my side either. So we will be back, hopefully, for the first joint recap and waiver show next week. We'll obviously touch on some recappy stuff today. That's natural with like the previews and things. Anyway, just before we jump into the Thursday night football recap, I was just gonna give the socials and everything. So if you have a question for a particular game in the preview show or in the recap show for that matter, or if there's a particular player you have a question on, or if you want to submit someone for the 20 questions segment, let us know by emailing LOCFantasyShow@gmail.com. Or you can reach out on our socials, the Facebook page, it's just LOC Fantasy Show, Reddit, our LOC Fantasy Show, or LOC _ Fantasy _ Show. X, we're at LOC Fantasy Show. That one's easy, as is Instagram, same one there, and TikTok is LOC.fantasy.show. So all fairly similar, so you'll be able to find us one of those and send along whatever you want to send us. We have some things to nicely tie up from last week though, Chris, because we did not do the recap show. So we have the League of Champions candidate and the League of Donkeys candidate for week 2. I didn't actually ask yours this week, so we'll just go with mine again this week. That's fine. But you'll like who I've got for the League of Champions candidate for this week, because it is Alvin Kamara with his 42 points. Chris has him in our League of Record, 108 combined yards, 4 touchdowns, so a very worthy League of Champions candidate for week 2, Chris.
Oh, very much so, and the resurgence of Alvin Kamara this season is definitely an undercurrent. In certain leagues he would have definitely been trending downwards, but this level of production that he's seemingly getting this year is RB1, and RB1 maybe the top tier of RB1 worthy.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly a draft steal, and so far, through 2 games, in standard scoring, that is, and in 6-point TDs. So I've got him down as here at 59 points through 2 games.
Not a bad start.
Wow. So yeah, absolutely. It's numbers that we haven't seen from Kamara for a good 3 or 4 seasons now, and certainly back to his best. The star never fades.
No, definitely not. And then of course, where we have a champions candidate, we also have a League of Donkey candidate. So the League of Donkeys candidate for week 2, unfortunately, is Travis Kelce with 0.6 points, only 6 yards to his name. So yeah, he's very worthy of that honour for week 2, certainly compared to where you drafted him.
Oh, absolutely, and you'd expect him to be, every week, your number 1 tight end. I mean, that's what a lot of people drafted him, but at the same time, 4 points through 2 games is not what you wanted. Unfortunately, it may be the time where, I think a lot of people will start thinking this as the season goes on and sees that where, 1, you start believing your own hype, and 2, you're more of a celebrity than a player, and that might be the one Kelce has right now. The question will surround the off season: was he well prepared, and was he well prepared for football? And at this stage,
I mean, if I was dating Taylor Swift, I'd probably be fairly distracted as well for Travis Kelce. It doesn't excuse the fancy output, but to your point.
And they've got other weapons, and they're using those weapons well, and maybe that's the thing. But eventually, time and celebrity goes to these guys' heads, and I think maybe that's the way it is right now. for our old mate Mr. Kelsey.
Yeah, quite possibly. We will, of course, have a bit more on the Saints and the Chiefs in the preview section. Before we do that, though, we've got some Kings and Peasants scores to compare, Chris. I actually had a negative score.
Oh, no.
We did quite well in week 1. Our net score was I think mine was 50 or something. Yours was 80. I can't remember. But terrible. I had negative 6.94 was my net score this week. So yours was 26.76. So we were both way down compared to week 1. But you are again the winner. So a round of applause to you. You are 2-0 in this. So I need to get my act together with my Kings and Peasants this week. So. Well done. Should we recap the Thursday night football game first, Chris?
Shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, let's hit the recap jingle. Here we go. Oh, that gets you hyped up for recapping. We're not going to be long. It was the New York England Patriots, the New York Jets last night. 24-3 Jets. The first thing I wrote down from this game is, of course, Aaron Rodgers throws another touchdown to Alan Lazard.
Keeping him relevant.
Rodgers loves his guys. There was I saw a funny, tweet or something. It was Lazard is the first player to reach 3 receiving touchdowns this year. Obviously, because he has the benefit of having played, a third game before anyone else, but the point is still quite amusing. So I still don't think he's a thing particularly. It's just a bit random because yardage-wise, he was about the same as Mike Williams this week. Mike Williams does seem to be getting a little bit more involved now, so I think that will obviously eat into Lazard a bit more. But he did get another touchdown. I think for the Patriots, this is kind of exactly what we were expecting to see from the Patriots all along. It just kind of took us a couple of games to get there.
Yeah.
I think maybe we can give them a bit of the benefit of the doubt because, Thursday night football games are obviously a bit weird. It's a short turnaround and they were away as well. So this was always probably going to happen. But one thing to call out, Chris, you give your take on it. Ramondre Stevenson, obviously, he's kind of overperformed our expectations the first couple of weeks. He only had 6 touchdowns in this one and a fumble to boot. 6 touches, sorry, not 6 touchdowns if I said that. 6 touches, right? And a fumble. Again, we were expecting Ramondre not to be great, and I think he's overperformed that in week 1. But yeah, this is probably worse than what we were expecting. But I think for the Patriots season long, probably somewhere in the middle of what they were last night and what they have been the first couple of weeks is roughly where they're going to be.
I think you're right, and I say they've played 2 teams which, in the Bengals were dysfunctional week 1, and then the Seahawks who were stuttering but did finally get through it in week 2, and again making that transition from system to system. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that playing quite an established offense there. I say quite an established offense, a 2-season established offense for the Jets. It's come on start. Rodgers has got something to prove. It doesn't get any better for the Patriots as well because their next 3 games versus the 49ers, versus the Dolphins, and versus the Texans. And I think that if you're the Stevenson owner, you'd be very, very scared in those 3 that they're just going to get blasted away.
I think the Dolphins one's probably going to be okay, given they're potentially against them, but the other 2, I completely agree.
Yeah, it's about coming from playing from behind, isn't it? And to be honest with you, say the Dolphins' offense, yes, although they may not have Tua, they probably won't have Tua.
He's on IR. They definitely won't have to.
Definitely won't have to. They've got an explosive offense there, and I think that again, if you're going to get blasted, then it's a problem. But having said that, he is still the only, from my opinion anyway, the one offensive weapon that you can probably hang your hat on and say that you'd want to start. Hunter Henry's not had a terrible start if you're in a tight end league, but certainly week to week, he's going to be a frustrating, inconsistent starter for you.
Definitely, yeah. I think maybe there might be shoots of them trying to get Demario Douglas more involved because he hadn't been really involved in the first couple of games, and he did have quite a number of targets and catches last night. Certainly, if you were in PPR, he could maybe be someone worth adding. But yeah, to your point, at this stage, there's no one reliable. And then really on the other side for the Jets, it was just kind of as you'd expect it, really. Rodgers actually had quite a nice day. Hall and Wilson got involved in the action. I don't think we really have our views are not changed with the Jets at all. This was kind of as we expected it, so I don't think we need to say anything more on them. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love the fact that Rodgers is back. I love the fact that there's that he is a personality, whether or not you like his personality or not. I personally quite like his personality, but yeah, there's still room for him there, and I think with the amount of weapons that he's got around him, the system that he likes, the OC that he likes, there's a lot to look at for the Jets there this season, especially as the division is a little bit weaker, well, significantly weaker now.
Yeah.
In terms of especially for the Patriots, but also for the Dolphins, as you mentioned, and yeah, I think it's there for the taking for them this year. But this is the Jets. Something terrible is going to happen at some point.
Yeah, they'll find a way to jet it up as they always do. Yeah, absolutely. Right, Chris. That's it, obviously, for the recap of those night games. So let us get to the previews. Okay, we are going to start off with the 2-0 LA Chargers at the 2-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think either of us would have been expecting both of these teams to be 2-0 necessarily at this point, but here we are. The Chargers have been, I think, a lot more competent than we were expecting. I mean, I know you, Chris, have ruminated about how much of a joke they've been over the last, while. But Jim Harbaugh seemingly has actually been the perfect, I think, appointment for this team. His hard-nosed style, he's sort of had a culture change there, and I think it's really, really showing through. They've had a good run. They've maybe had a bit, benefit of the opposition with Carolina and the Las Vegas Raiders. This is certainly the hardest test they'll face in this Pittsburgh team. And on the other side of the ball, I think Pittsburgh probably have been better than we'd think as well. Defensively, we were obviously expecting them to be quite good, but I think offensively, they've not been good. I'm not sitting here saying that, but, especially when it was kind of announced, we came in, thought Russell Wilson would be the starter, and then it's like, oh no, it's Justin Fields. It's like, okay, what are we going to get? But they've actually kind of kept him on the training wheels on quite well, I think, and they've done what they needed to do, importantly, and they've both had a good start. Is that fair?
I think that's fair to say. I think that's a very fair assessment. For me, these teams are the mirror image of each other on each side of the country. They both rely on their defense to be rock solid, and then they can do their thing. I'm looking at some of the stats here. For the Chargers first, second overall defense, Steelers fifth overall defense, passing game, Chargers 29th overall passing. Steelers 30th overall pass, so it tells you what you need to know there, because both of them like to get deep and then like to run the ball. So, we look at the Chargers. So third overall rushing with Dobbins and Edwards. Dobbins has been, from our perspective anyway, a bit of a fantasy revelation.
Yep.
266 yards through two games with 2 TDs. Not too bad.
He's making it rain. He's making it rain big time so far.
Not bad return on your investment, but this is where it is, I think, and I think that this game has a bit of a defensive stalemate written all over it.
Yeah.
Because if you can bottle that up, then the passing game isn't quite as fluid as you might think or might want for the Chargers right now. For the Steelers, obviously, quarterback is the issue. It's probably their number one vulnerability, perhaps. Justin Fields has come in and done a sterling job, I would say, in keeping it together, but only on the back of the defense. And 30th overall offense in the league doesn't really bode so well. Mid-tier rushing, 30th overall passing. So I think for me, this here has a from a fantasy implication anyway. Keep doing as you're doing with with any Chargers running back, but mainly Dobbins. I think Edwards is definitely in the number 2 role.
Oh, he's just such a plodder. It's not relevant at all.
You've got to hope he falls over the falls over the goal line. And then receiving yards, you look at Johnston and McConkey, haven't set the world alight so far. Will they? I mean, they've got to throw somewhere. I wouldn't necessarily play them in this game though. If you've got anybody else, then avoid. As for the Steelers,
Harrison Pickens are okay, but they're not going to win you your week.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And so I'm pretty certain that both defenses will be a relatively solid play here, cancelling each other out. But one thing that we can say is that I think both kickers will be very much in play in this game.
Yeah. I mean, so much so, Chris, you have named Cameron Dicker as your king of the week.
I certainly have. So I had Boswell last week. I still think that he could be very good for you, but I think Dicker on a slightly better offense will have more opportunities.
Yeah, I think Boswell's a good shot as well. He was nearly my king kicker of the week. And yeah, completely agree. Steelers D is going to be good too. I'm actually going with the Chargers D as my peasant defense of the week, though, because whilst the output's been relatively low and the Chargers D has played fairly well, it's obviously been very soft opposition. And what we've seen from the Steelers offense so far is being very risk averse, turnover reverse. We know Justin Fields does like a turnover, but seemingly Arthur Smith is whispering in his headset the right things, and it's causing him to play mistake-free football. It's going to be, like you said, it's going to be a ground and pound. Probably very quick. Clock's going to run out in a jiffy game. So, yeah, I don't think there's necessarily going to be a lot of opportunities for the Chargers defense. And, yeah, to your point about the passing option as well, Chris, Justin Herbert is your peasant of the week as well.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so
I think he's going to see an awful lot of TJ Watt.
Yeah, most likely. Although saying that, Joe Alt has been, I think, the early doors candidate, you would say, for Rookie of the Year. He has played phenomenally well through 2 games. And again, he's played Max Crosby and Jadeveon Clowney, not insignificant opposition. TJ Watt is, of course, another level, but that's going to be really interesting to watch this week.
I love Joe Alt. I think he's just a normal dude playing football. I love that.
O-linemen often are.
Quite.
Yeah. Right, that's it for that one then. So, Chris, do you want to take us through our next game here?
Absolutely. So, the next game that we have, Houston at Minnesota. Now, both teams are 2-0. Both teams have been surprising. In one way, Houston have been surprising as they can continue their run. But Minnesota, wow. With Sam Darnold at the helm, who knew that Sam Darnold going to a grown-up franchise would be actually pretty decent. So yeah, it's one of those games where the Texans look like they're one of the teams to beat in the AFC. I think they really do match up against anybody. But so far the Vikings have been pretty legit too, and on both sides of the ball as well. Mixon's likely to sit with an ankle injury, unfortunately. Pierce is still nursing injury from last season. So Cam Akers is in. Akers seems to come in at this time every season.
I think you can plug and play him this week, to be honest. Because if they're both going to sit, he's going to get the volume. It's not the best of matchup, but if you're really, if you're looking for an option, you got kind of a starter with a bad matchup. I think you just plug and play him because he should get the volume.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that so we saw Mixon week 1. If there's anything like that, and we know what Cam Akers can do, you're dead right there. Yeah. Texas receivers all round. What do you think about them? I think there's definitely scope to play them all there.
Yeah, no, I think you're obviously starting Nico, and then Dillon Diggs. I think you've got to start them both. It's not the easiest of matchups against the Vikings. You said it at the top that their D has been pretty good. But you can't bench them because if they have a good game, you'll just feel like a fool. It's likely not both of them will hit again. Dell's obviously been quite quiet so far. But yeah, you've got to play them both, I think.
Absolutely. I think in the back of that, say, Kami Fairbairn as a kicker is a good option for you as well. He's going to get an awful lot of volume, especially in good kicking conditions.
Yes.
Love it. As tempting as it may be for you, we are not backing you to stream Sam Darnold.
Not yet. I'm still not convinced Like, it's been a nice start for the Vikings. I still can't shake the feeling that they might not be real, but I mean, it's impressive certainly what they did against the Niners last week. But yeah, the Texans D is pretty good too. So
yeah, absolutely. And say the obvious guys that you want to start there. Say start Justin Jefferson, start Aaron Jones, Jordan Addison.
Yeah, I think he's still going to miss this one with his ankle injury, so there's no one else in the passing game behind JJ that's of any interest, especially when he's out.
Absolutely, and so it's only a matter of time before the Sam Darnold carriage turns back into a pumpkin. So let's hope it's this week's roll out the Texans D. I think that's well worth it.
Yeah.
And for me, the Vikings D, I think again, he's played some dysfunction this week. Is playing a really red hot Texans offense.
Mm-hmm.
Me, it's my peasant of the week.
Yep. No, that's. I think that's a good choice. Coming up, good offense. Yeah, they're obviously the number one defense in scoring in our league of reckon anyway, but probably in a lot of your leagues as well. So yeah, no, I think that's a good choice for peasant D of the week. Yeah, don't really have anything else to add on this one, so we'll just mosey on over to Philadelphia Eagles at the New Orleans Saints. Philadelphia 1-1 after that very disappointing end of the Monday Night Football game for them. They'll certainly be looking to wash the taste of that out of their mouth. Good thing they're coming up against checks notes, the hottest team in the NFL at the moment, seemingly the 2-0 New Orleans Saints. I mean, they've really been the surprise of the season so far. They've just been electric. They are going to settle down. They literally cannot keep this pace up. It is insane. But I'm convinced, Chris, they're going to be a good football team this year. What do you think?
I think you're dead right. New Orleans have had a rejuvenated offense, obviously, even for fantasy purposes, exactly what we're looking for. We knew Derek Carr was a pretty decent QB. We know that he's got some very good offensive weapons around him. We know that they've got a competent O-line. We know that they've got a lot of good things going in their favour. And say the stats back that up. 4th overall offense, 7th overall defense. Rushing yards for fun, as we've seen with Kamara. It turns out that Rashid Shaheed is indeed a very competent fantasy receiver well.
I think he's an every week starter at this point. Maybe if you've got a terrible matchup, but beyond that, yeah.
Can do it all. Unlucky if you're the Chris Olave owner.
I think they can coexist.
But they can certainly coexist in this offense as it is. Kamara is still a thing there, especially for the passing game. Whilst on the other side, you look at Jalen started very, very well indeed. I say if you got him as your QB, obviously you roll him out with absolute ease every week. And then outside of that, I say in much the same way, Barkley turns out again getting out of the Giants, best thing he's ever done for his career. Smith and AJ Brown can coexist there as fantasy receivers, so fire both of those guys up too. I think this has shootout written all over it. Do you think?
Yeah, I do. AJ Brown. I did actually see before this that Nick Sirianni said he doesn't need to practice to play this week because he obviously missed the Monday Night Football game with the hamstring injury. If he's playing, you're definitely playing him. You're absolutely right, Chris. But I would imagine he's probably going to miss this one. He hasn't practiced yet, but if he gets a limited today, or like Sirianni says, it didn't seem like too severe a thing. It just sounded a bit like tightness when he did it, so I don't think it's too severe a one. But yeah, just definitely check that before Sunday. Like you said, just play your main Eagles, Chris. I would avoid probably kicker and defense in this one. Certainly the defense, you don't want to play them against the Saints. Equally, you don't want to play the Saints either. With how hot the Saints are, I'm not sure you want to play a player their kicker either, whose name escapes me because it's not Will Lutz anymore. He's is it Will Lutz?
Is it Groupie?
It's Groupie. Thank you. Yeah, Lutz. Yeah, he moved on to Denver, didn't he? And then I'd sit Jake Elliott though because I think the Eagles are probably going to be playing from behind in this one. I was just going to talk about Taysom Hill for a hot minute because he got injured in the last week's game and his usage has been really good here. I mean, because Clint Kubiak's come in and he's basically made this Saints offense as good as it is. But yeah, his usage is seemingly a lot better. Whenever I see a Saints play, he seems to be on the field, but they're using him like a more traditional player. They're not using him in these gimmicky, Joker roles where he's trying to get him a touchdown, basically, it feels like. I think that's a large part of why the rest of the offense is, or certainly the rest of fantasy-wise, the rest of the players on this offense are doing well as well, because Taysom Hill isn't taking these things away. So, but they are absolutely playing better than they have been as well. So yeah, that obviously helps there as well. I think that's probably it for this one. So Chris, you want to take us through our next game?
Absolutely. So, I feel for you if you somehow are one of the fans of the Denver Broncos. But yes, 0-2 Denver Broncos versus the 2-0 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I think it's fair to say Denver have not had a good start, and I think from what we want to talk about, from pure fantasy purposes, if you have any Denver Broncos player, you will not play them from here on out because their offense is not good.
It's a beautiful sunny day. There's no rain anywhere. No one's making it rain for Denver.
They certainly are not. On the other side, Tampa, though, very different. And I think, again, we talk about coexisting wide receivers. They have a pair there. They have a relatively solid back. And they've got Baker, who, again, will get you points every week. Not guaranteeing you amazing points every week, but he will guarantee you some.
Yeah, I mean, they can't run the ball too well at the moment, so that's sort of why they're passing so much and doing well doing so. But I mean, it's working for them. So, like you say, it's not going to stop. So, stream him.
Absolutely. Seems to be thriving down there. Despite numerous defensive injuries, they went out to Detroit and won. And it wasn't the world's best game in the world, but won nevertheless. Very difficult place to go. So I think from a health point of view, or at least health of your fantasy team, bench all Broncos.
Yeah.
Absolutely do not go anywhere near them whatsoever. Baker's a streamable option for sure. I think Godwin and Evans throughout the course of the season will probably average out as both being pretty similar. This week, however, I think Godwin's gonna be the play over Evans. Evans is gonna get Patrick Surtain, who might be the best thing that's happened to the Broncos for some seasons, and that's why he's my peasant of the week.
Oh, Mike Evans, a peasant. You don't.
It feels bad to say that, but we've seen Mike Evans just crumble and fall when it comes to a good corner. That's.
Well, whenever he plays the Saints against Lattimore, it feels like he just gets erased. So you're right, he's an amazing receiver, but it's just some games. I mean, he's not necessarily played with the Baker's a good quarterback, but it's not enough to necessarily overcome that. So I think it's a good call.
Absolutely. You're taking a bit of a dice roll on Bucks running backs, though. Would you say if you start one?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't start one, to be honest. Rashad White should be back. He did get nicked up in last week's game, but again, he just continues to be quite inefficient. They're just not running the ball well. Bucky Irving's mixing in, so if I could probably play someone else. I would. On the other side of your peasant, though, I am making Chris Godwin my king of the week because I think Evans' loss is his gain. Anybody? Yeah.
I don't just dispute that logic, to be fair.
It's a good one to be in. Yeah. Anybody else in this game for you, Chris, of interest?
Not overly. Pretty much it. I don't get too excited about either these. The Bucks are bang. I tell you, the Bucks are bang average square. Are they? The Bucks are mid tier.
Bang average squared.
Broncos, though, they're worse than bang average squared.
Oh, I don't even have a jingle to describe. I'm going to play the donkey jingle for Denver.
How we go? Jingle for that, yeah. Apart from Patrick Surtain, who isn't a donkey in any way, shape, or form, deserves better.
How were we to know that when Russ said Broncos, let's ride, he was talking about riding donkeys?
I feel for that franchise, but it doesn't matter because the owners don't care. They're
they're so rich, yeah. And I think we're seeing it with Sean Payton again, a situation where he obviously kind of noped out of New Orleans because he stopped caring, and I kind of feel like the same thing's going to happen here with... And like you say, the owners have so much money, they can get rid of him and do whatever they want and keep paying him. As we know, the the head coach contracts are all guaranteed. It just does not matter. And I have another king in this game, actually, because both Chase McLaughlin and the Bucks D are elite options this week. So the Bucks D is going to be my king defense of the week here. So we'll go on to the next game, which is Green Bay against Tennessee Titans, or at Tennessee Titans. So Green Bay 1-1. After that somewhat surprising win last week over Indianapolis with Malik Willis. But I think that's just a sign of a solid, good football team with a good head coach. Now it's Malik Willis homecoming, obviously coming back to Tennessee. Boys! Is it, though? Because Jordan Love he's been practicing on a limited basis, so he might return. The Titans have been a bit of a mix of, I think, competent and woefully incompetent at the same time. That just feels like the kind of team they're going to be this year, Chris, which, as a Titans fan, is probably a bit frustrating for you. But,
do you know what, though? At least it's all rather exciting. I mean, some QB play over the last few years has been less than ideal. It's been pretty dull. Seeing Derrick Henry go for a lot of yards, I think, bearing in mind that, as everybody knows, I love Derrick Henry. But at the same time, to have Levis, who 1 minute can be a hero and next minute, or in fact, 1 minute can be a king and next minute can be a peasant, because that's what we do on this show. That is the absolute epitome of Will Levis. Yeah. And I'm here for it. I'm here for the roller coaster every week. However, I do think this week the Packers D could absolutely beat him up, and as a result, they are a very, very good option in this game.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely play Packers. I think if Willis is out there, the Titans D, you could maybe even argue. I know he had the good game against the Colts last week at home, but that was a very coached, I think, good game. You have seen him before, Chris. He's not a great quarterback. He only attempted 14 passes, so I think the use will be the Packers D is definitely a great option here. When it comes to the skill positions, I think this game is quite cut and dry, really. I mean, you're obviously playing Josh Jacobs. It is a tougher defense. But whether Love's there or not, I think they're going to try and lean on him still, so he's going to get the volume. If Love isn't playing, don't play any of these receivers. If Love is playing, I think you could probably drop in Jaden Reed as a flex, maybe. Again, it's a tough matchup against Snead, though, and we don't know how healthy he is, so you may be best just going Jacobs or bust, skill position-wise for the Packers. Do you think that's fair, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think there's a great... while this all shakes out, I think it's risky. Outside of Jacobs, to be honest, I think Jacobs is an absolute must-starter in whoever his quarterback is.
Yeah, and on the Titans side of the board, it's not really raining points, but there is a couple of options who might give you some points. Calvin Ridley, he obviously did quite well actually last week.
Yeah,
you could say that again against Sauce Gardner of all people, and Tony Pollard as well. He's been the back to own so far for Tennessee, and Spears obviously got a bit nicked up last week. I think we're seeing what we kind of predicted, that he is going to be the lead of this backfield, and he's just going to go as the offense goes. He's not really much more than that. So yeah, if you've got them, you can use them, but that's probably it for the Tennessee side.
Yeah, even Hopkins right now, I wouldn't go for that and say, outside of, as you say, Ridley's a weird one for me, because he's going to get, as we saw last week, he was used in multiple ways, but it's whether that can continue, and obviously with a 40-yard TD bomb at the end, it pads the numbers out a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, even Hopkins, again, it depends on your league format, how deep a league is, but he's probably a drop in a lot of leagues, I would say, certainly if you're a 12 team or something like that. So that's that one. Let's go to our next game then, Chris.
Oh dear. Yes, the 0-2 New York Football Giants versus the 1-1 Cleveland Browns. Now, I have to say that this game, I don't really know where to start with it. Is it going to be entertaining? Probably not. Has it got to happen? Absolutely yes. The Giants are poor. They're not the poorest team in the league, as we'll come to a little bit later on, but they're not great. To get out of this slump, it's going to be very, very difficult for them. Cleveland, on the other hand, say up and down team. I think their defense is pretty good. Offensively, it can fire and misfire, more misfire than fire, I think. Mm-hmm. For the Giants, so we saw Malik Neighbors have a relatively good game last week. But again, it's very volatile. I think outside of him, Devin Singletary is a very weak flex. I can't hang my hat on that.
No.
You know, say with Neighbours, if you want to take the role on him, I wouldn't do it this week because that Cleveland D is
Yeah.
pretty stout. So Deshaun Watson.
The connection is complete.
Is it? Deshaun Watson. My speaker's talking.
Your Alexa likes Deshaun Watson, apparently.
Indeed.
I'll refrain from making any more jokes.
Indeed. Yeah, it doesn't live in Florida. Anyway, Deshaun Watson. What do we think here, then, Nath? I say not a podcast favorite of ours.
No, you're just looking at the opposition, really. I mean, I know this sort of stymied Jaden Daniels a bit last week, but I think that's more about a rookie quarterback. If you're pushed to a quarterback and you need an option to play, I don't think it's the worst stream because the running game hasn't been great for Cleveland so far. They need to get Amari Cooper going, particularly. Because he's had a very quiet start as well with a couple of good corners playing against him, and then they need to get Watson going too. Really, I think this is kind of a good. It's at home as well, so yeah. If you're pushed for a quarterback, I think you can use him as an option, but only if a better option isn't out there. In the same vein, I think you're probably playing Cooper. Can you play Judy in this game too? Because he's actually been the better receiver so far.
Yeah, I think Judy's a really talented receiver. Just has ended up in some really bad teams. So yes, I think so. However, and I think this is the game to roll the jingle out. Looking at the Browns top to bottom right now, this team. We talked about the Bengals last week of having the same sort of composition. The Browns, my word,
Bang average squared.
That squared. Say the Giants are poor, but the Browns bang average squared on offense.
Yeah.
My word.
Yeah.
It's not one that we really want to preview. This one, I think it's going to be a pretty clear win for the Browns. That makes the Browns a very, very good option for you if you have them. They are absolutely my kings of the week.
Yeah.
By far and away.
Yeah. Good call.
Defense.
Good call.
Daniel Jones will be running around like no end.
Yeah.
And I think you've got a peasant in this game, have you
I
not?
do, yep, and it won't surprise you to hear that it's on the Giants side of the board. I know Devin Singletary had a pretty good game last week, but yeah, if the Giants played the Commanders every week, they might be good for fantasy, but they don't. So Singletary is going to return to peasantdom this week, unfortunately. David Njoku is still injured as well, so I don't think he's going to play further, adding to less, as you say, more bang average players playing for the Browns offense. On to our next game then. So the 1-1 Chicago Bears at the 0-2 Indianapolis. Indianapolis Colts. It's quite hard to believe that this Colts team is 0-2. It felt like they had a layup against Malik Willis and the Packers last week, but they did not play well. I suppose it's been a fairly tough going away to Lambeau and also away to the division rivals Texans in week 1. They were good in week 1. It wasn't as good last week, obviously. And the Bears have sort of been maybe the opposite. They've not played particularly well, I would say. They've not necessarily they've played the Tennessee Titans and the Houston Texans, but they're 1-1. Their defense has been good, to be fair, but yeah, Caleb's obviously not really got it going yet. My question for you, Chris, does Indianapolis' offense struggle in this one again? I find it hard to believe they would, but the Bears' defense is good. Are we going to see kind of Richardson light it up like we were kind of all expecting?
Yeah, I mean, it was this time last year that Richardson lit it up for the first half, scored 30 points, and went off and never saw him again. And I hope that this is what the kind of two week period what it takes him to go into the stratosphere. Look, Anthony Richardson is through 2 games has somehow amassed 416 yards. 3 TDs and 4 picks. You know what he is at this point? He's exciting, and he's going to give you something one day that's going to win you your week. Until then, he's going to be extremely, extremely frustrating. We talked on the show last week and perhaps the week before that as well that Anthony Richardson was the second coming of Cam Newton. I am convinced now that's the case. Convinced.
Yeah,
I
think it's
just
a good
because
chance.
the way that he wins games is it's either himself or something quite amazing or nothing. Again, we'll get the stats out because these aren't very pretty reading, especially if you're a Bears fan. You have the 31st overall offense, you have the 8th best defense, the 32nd and last best passing offense, and the 28th and almost last rushing offense. That is not good.
No.
And I would say you're won week one because Will Levis was your best player.
Yep.
And he was on the opposition. So don't get too ahead of yourself here. I think you're right, Nath. The Colts here are gonna be resurgent. They're gonna be able to bottle up whatever offense the Bears can throw at them. It hasn't been very good sledding so far for the Bears. And yeah, I just don't see it in a game that's going to be away for the Bears. I think the Colts may have this one.
Yeah, I think win-wise you're right. I struggle with the Bears because I don't think Caleb's played too badly. He got beat to high hell last week, stayed in the game. Yes, he was missing some throws, but he was under pressure constantly. This is going to be the easiest defensive matchup he's had so far, I think, going away to Tennessee and away, or playing against Tennessee, sorry, and away to Houston. I think that's tough. Those are two good units. This is the easiest unit he will have played, and they're going to be without DeForest Buckner, I think, as well. I streamed the Colts in our league record last week, and they were terrible against Malik Willis and the Packers. I've got to believe. I know they're at home, but I've got to believe that Caleb Williams can have a better game. I'm not saying they're going to be as far as good, but have a better game in this Bears offense against this Colt defense. To your point, though, that still doesn't really get me too excited from a fantasy perspective. I'm not telling you to stream Caleb. I think he can play DJ Moore. I'm not entirely in love with it. I'd like to see it a bit more, but he's not been awful so far to start the season. Swift has been awful. This is a plum matchup, but does it matter with the... I don't know. I think he's a stream, maybe. But if you've got better options...
I wouldn't touch him with a barge pole.
I don't blame you. And like you said, the Colts D, you can stream them, just don't get your hopes up too much because they're not the best of units either. And I think with this Richardson, it's going to be, like you say, it's going to be quite exciting games where, it's high scoring and things like that on both sides. I'm not really sure how much this D is going to help them out in a lot of games. So that's that one. From one interesting game to another, Chris. Interesting is perhaps not the right word for this one, but you can go for it.
Especially if you're a Carolina fan. No, 0-2 Carolina play the 1-1 Las Vegas Raiders coming off quite the win in week 2.
Oh, yeah. They get an applause for that. That was against the Ravens. Going into M&T Bank as well.
They came from nowhere as well. Yeah, absolutely. They deserve it.
Sorry, continue.
No, well-deserved applause. Yes. And here we find Carolina 2 weeks in, already in disarray. They've bench Bryce Young to protect him from the Wolves. We need to bench David Tepper as well, preferably outside the stadium. Again, entering, this is quite possibly in somebody who's going to make our Hall of Fame, because as a fantasy legend, which he quite rightly is, he enters this season. Andy Dalton, welcome back. So yeah. I don't know how that's going to go, but you do know that with Andy Dalton coming in, there's going to be some very conservative play.
I think it's going to be better. We had this sample last year that he came in for. I think Bryce Young was injured that game. I think it was in Seattle. They were playing Seattle. He went for, I think, about 340 yards. He might have even thrown a couple of touchdowns. I don't know if don't expect that this week. I think that Seahawks defense wasn't great last year, but I think he can improve this team. But the question is, improve from where? Because they're about as bad as you can be. What does improvement look like? Is it still very bad? Is it bad, or is it sort of more towards mediocre? It's hard to know.
Staying in the game and having some competent offense. But the problem is, you have a face full of Max Crosby the whole game. I mean, I just don't see it. I don't see how this team can improve. Their roster is not good. You know, the offensive pieces they've got are worse than average. They're everyone's reserves. There's not one player in there that makes me excited. Their defense is not good. So yeah, overall, you can say to yourself, okay, well, write this one off again, because I think the Raiders have got something that that certain teams don't have, and that's a little bit of spirit. They came back from nowhere to win last week, as we just discussed. But Gardner Minshew, to be fair to him, has been very, very consistent through two weeks.
Yeah,
and has used what weapons he's got pretty well. And we saw this with the Colts last year.
Yep.
He just uses weapons that are around him with effective use. Devontae, not bad, 169 yards through 2 games, but this is one for the scouting board here, and didn't really take a lot to know. But Brock Bowers has that 156 yard leading all tight ends, not just divisional tight ends, not just AFC tight ends, but all tight ends in the NFL at 156 yards. It is the coming of something great there, and he is looking through 2 weeks anyway. Not to get too excited now. Looking like a phenomenal addition.
Well, he's my king of the week, Chris, this week.
Oh, so he should be as well.
Yeah.
So he should be.
Deservedly so. I mean, given the state of the tight end landscape, he is more than a king. He's more like a messiah, the shining savior
Yes,
to the position at this point. No, you're right. It's amazing, because typically we see tight ends come in and they don't usually perform so early because they need to get a bit older. They need to get a bit more seasoned. We know Kyle Pitts had that good first year, but that's sort of the outlier, and it looks like Bowers is well on his way to that, to your point.
Yeah, I'm loving his usage.
And the Raiders can't run the ball either. Sorry to cut, but they can't run the ball either. They're not running it great, which everyone thought they'd be a really running heavy team this year, but they can't run it, so they're throwing it. And like you said, that makes Minshew good. That means Bowers is good. That means Adams will be good too.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you're a Zamir White owner and somehow if you're an Alexander Mattison owner, why would you do that? Then yeah, that's unfortunate for you, and you should not start them, and you should probably consider dropping them at this point.
I think in this game you can probably stream them. They're not massive options, but I think just based on the matchup, look at what the running backs have done to the Panthers so far. J.K. Dobbins absolutely shredded them,
Keep them.
Yeah.
So if this is the last week you're going to use them, let bygones be bygones. Don't get drawn in too much if they score big this week, and then continue on.
Yeah,
yes,
trade high, sell high would be the one. Yeah, sell high or
sell
drop.
extremely high, or sell to at least what you can. But a comfortable win for the Raiders. We're obviously massive on them. We're massive on Bowers on this show, or at least I am. I think Minshew's a streaming option.
Yep,
So
agreed. Yep, and
let's fire him up with absolute confidence.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I've actually got another king here, Daniel Carlson. Just because they're going to drum up on the Panthers, and you are also calling Devontae Adams your king this week, which is entirely fair.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
another one there. I mean, like I say, if you're in an absolute desperate situation, I think you could project that Andy Dalton should make this offense a little better. That might make Hubbard, Deontay, and Thielen be weak options, but I'm talking if you're between a rock and a hard place. Otherwise, don't do it.
For a minute there, I thought you were going to say if you're in a bind, say start Andy Dalton as your.
Oh hell no, none of that. No, he might make them competent. He's not going to have a good fantasy day. And you know what? To that point as well, we haven't talked about the Raiders D in this one yet. Yes, they're a good option for the week generally. I think that's fair. But I would also caution that them coming in are not going to make the playing against the Panthers the default amazing option that it has been through 2 weeks. So yes, if you can get them or you have them, you can still play them, but just temper your expectations, is all I'm saying. Okay, next game, we have the 1-1 Miami Dolphins at the 2-0 Seattle Seahawks. Obviously, the big news here is Tua is now on IR after suffering his concussion on last Thursday night football game. So it's the Skylar Thompson show. Certainly here for this week. Mike McDaniels obviously expressed confidence in him. Seattle have looked good. They're likely to not have Kenneth Walker again with his oblique injury, so prepare accordingly. And indeed, on the other side of the ball, McDaniel today has said that he's pessimistic on Mostert playing this week. He'll, if you recall, missed last Thursday night's football game with a chest injury. He has been practicing on a limited basis this week, but that would seem to suggest he's going to sit another one here. So, I mean, the Dolphins have sucked on defense through 2 games, basically, Chris. So, play all your Hawks, I think.
I think play all your skill positions in this one, Naithan. I think let's just go the chips all in the middle.
You're both sides of the ball.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Play all your Hawks, play all your Dolphins, because this game could be a really really fun one. I think.
Oh, it could be fun. Yeah.
And it's even more fun. It's McDaniel versus McDonald, which is going to be an interesting one for the commentators as well. So enjoy that. Whatever's calling the game. I think that if we talked about shootout games earlier on with the Saints and the Eagles, this one here has definitely got that written all over it too. So I would certainly.
I'm amazed how confident you are in Skylar Thompson's abilities.
I think that you talk about system quarterbacks. Let's go. Because even with the Dolphins, it doesn't matter really who's under center because they can run at you.
No,
they can use what they've got. I trust the system.
To your point, I am a bit more confident in the Dolphins' defense than the fantasy community seems to be. I'm not as high as you, but I agree. You've got an offensive-minded head coach who's last year, schemed these amazing running games, and in my opinion, I think you're right. They're going to try and lean more heavily on that. We saw what A-Chan can do. Okay, it would have been great if they had Mostert for this one as well, but I don't think they necessarily need him. And then I think going into it, you've had 10 days to game plan with Skylar Thompson in place as the known starter is very different. A backup coming into a game unexpectedly versus having the time to prepare with that. So yeah, to your point, I think they're going to be better. I'm not quite as confident to say play all your Dolphins. You can definitely play A-Chan, you can definitely play Hill. I would probably lean away from Waddle this week, but again, depending what your options are, you could maybe still go with him. Certainly if you're as confident as Chris is in Skylar Thompson.
Honestly, I've seen what system quarterbacks. This is what. Everyone was laughing at Brock Purdy when they bought him in. He is a system quarterback that works in that system. Out of the same coaching tree, you bring Skylar Thompson into a system that's clearly made for a system quarterback, like Tua is, like Thompson will be. I'm well happy with that. No problem at all. And come at me next week if I'm wrong. But same with the Seahawks. Last week we saw the emergence of JSN finally after a season of everyone going, when's he going to turn up? We saw him.
We did.
I think you'd be quite happy there. I think Gino's fine. I think Charbonnet's definitely fine.
He's my king of the week, as is Gino. Actually, I'm just going to do that all in one here.
Oh, we're double kinging.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the Dolphins have sucked on D. Really bad. Terrible. That's,
Horrible. You might even want to fire Noah Fant up because he's there for the team.
I'm not sure I got that. Well, I was going to ask you about Tyler Lockett. I'm not so convinced that because after week 1 we were like, well, looks like Tyler Lockett's still alive, and then after week 2 it's like, okay, maybe it is Metcalf and JSN after all.
So, yeah. I think I'd probably fade him at this point, but maybe not. I think the way that JSN came out last week probably shows that role is obsolete for Tyler Lockett now.
Yeah. I think that's
right. He can fade into the fantasy annals of time, knowing that he has done many a good service over many a year.
You sound like you're going to take him out the back and shoot him like old Yellow. Geez, it's only Tyler Lockett. He's only 31. We're the same age.
Not to write him off or anything like that, but yeah, I mean, let's be honest. There's some receivers that play their best football at this age, and he could be one of them. But he just needs to have more looks, and in that offense, probably not.
No, I think you're right. I'm making Jason Sanders my peasant kicker of the week as well. Just if they're good, like you said, it's going to be probably more of a shootout. I'm more convinced they're going to be from behind in this game, so not going to have the luxury of necessarily kicking field goals. So, that's me. Anything else on this one for you, Chris?
No, it's going to be. I'm looking for one of the games that this week. That's probably apart from Saints Eagles, which is going to be exciting. This is.
Oh no, it should be a good game. Yeah, and the other interesting note: this is the longest domestic trip you can make for a game in the US, from the bottom
there you are.
southeast
That's
to the
a
northwest. Yeah, and unfortunately, for the Dolphins, the Seahawks are obviously the home team here. So, right, our next game then, it's the 0-2 Baltimore Ravens against the 1-1 Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking forward to this one. I'm looking forward to this one, Chris, because both of these teams very much feel like they're at a crossroads, and it's a very interesting time for them both to play each other, I think, because I mean the prospect that the Ravens could go 0-3 just seems wild to me. I know they played the Chiefs in week 1, but I mean that game, dropping the game to the Raiders last week, that was just crazy. They've been good, I think, the Ravens. They've just not been elite, and the Cowboys, they had that amazing week 1 where they went into Cleveland and absolutely smacked them around, but then they just got smacked in the mouth by the Saints last week in their own house. I think they're probably a bit better than the game last week. Maybe they were just a bit overconfident after week 1. I don't know, but it's going to be two good teams going off against each other. I think in this one, Chris. On the Ravens side of the board, fantasy-wise, I think it's probably just Henry, Flowers.
No, it's not.
No,
it's definitely them.
Yeah.
It's definitely Lamar.
Oh, Lamar. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Do you want to roll him out? I do. I'll roll him out.
Isaiah Likely, you said. Sorry, was that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree, because I the reason I paused here is because I think Likely is actually a good option in this game. But I think Mark Andrews, he's certainly my peasant of the week, because I could see a similar thing. Like, if you've got him, don't probably go out and try and find a streaming tight end, or because it's garbage tight ends, you're going to struggle. But all I'm saying is, you've got him, don't expect a great game, because I could see a similar thing happening to week 1 here, where, especially if they've got Micah Parsons, obviously pass rushing, they keep him in to block more, and Isaiah, and probably this is your line of thinking too, Chris, that Likely then gets more involved in the pass game. Is that where you're coming from too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is the one. You got it. And I think with a game like this as well, where they've seen the effectiveness of such an approach, why not replicate that? But yeah, from a fantasy perspective, I think we're going to be absolutely fine with anyone who you would typically start, as Dave mentioned, with your Ravens. You're good. Lamar, on the other hand, is, worlds apart in terms of yardage so far. Obviously, you say through the air, 522 TDs, 1 pick, but on the ground, 167 on the ground. This is, when you talk about, all scrimmage yards, what has he gone, 687 through 2 games?
It's a lot of yardage.
A lot of yardage, and say anyone who picked him up, as maybe the third QB off the board, is absolutely laughing all the way to the bank at this point. But
he might be QB1. I think. I know you are, but he could be the QB1 for the year. I think
he's going to be QB1 by a distance. He's not going to be QB1 though.
Dak Prescott.
He's not going to be QB1. Correct. Not going to be QB1. He might be QB1 in his head.
No, but in reality, he is officially
bang average squared.
I'm calling it. He's bang average squared.
He is bang average squared. You're dead right there. I know Jerry loves him, but bang average squared.
It'd be a shame if he made him the richest quarterback in the league or something silly like that, wouldn't it?
Well, that'd be a very that'd be a very Texas thing to do, wouldn't it? Can you imagine? It'd be a very Jerry thing to do. But yeah, fair. Look, that whole entire offense this season, as we predicted, and I'm going to go saying predicted, has fallen off the cliff.
I don't know if they're off the cliff. Like Lamb's still going to be good, but if you drafted Dak in relying on him to be a quarterback, I completely agree with you. I'm not.
They are bottom half in almost everything except the pass game, which has been carried on by the brilliance, I would say, of their receivers, and that includes Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, I think
he's underrated.
He is underrated. The problem is, I think week 1, where they obviously sprung out to that big lead and their defense was dominating against the Browns, they didn't have to do so much. And then last week, yes, they got smacked in the mouth. So I think that's probably suppressed their stats. But I still very much take your point, because just watching them, you're right, it isn't the same electric offense that they had last year. But I don't think it's quite as bad maybe as...
No. They can't run the ball though.
No, well, that's an interesting point. I mean, you're obviously not starting either Dowdle or I hope you're not anyway, Zeke in this one. You shouldn't be. But it does look like Dowdle, maybe there's creepings of him starting to take over at least the lion's share of the workload. I think he definitely got more touches last week and more yards. Zeke sort of faded to obscurity. But yeah, I think they need someone to emerge from that backfield, really.
Yeah, that's the big difference between this time last year and now, is that this time last year Pollard was rolling, absolutely rolling, and now they haven't got anybody like that, and that's the difference. So for me, I think this is going to be a fun game, and certainly the fire of Baltimore's offense versus the ice of Dallas's defense. That's always likely to be an interesting matchup.
Yep, and we've got a GOAT kicker off here as well, Brandon Aubrey against Justin Tucker, who I foolishly made my peasant last week, and he only showed me up with about 12 or 13 points in our league of record, but play them both this week. And of course, I would be remiss of me not to give you this next game, Chris, given who the head coach of one of the teams is.
Well, quite. So, here we go. Dan Campbell's unbelievable, well, slightly unbelievable, not as unbelievable as last season, Detroit Lions versus the Arizona Cardinals, who, to be fair, have been very, very Jekyll and Hyde through 2 games. I think that after the start that they've had, which has been pretty lackluster, and last week, which was, especially at quarterback, very lackluster, we've seen this in the past where I think Big Dan's going to get him going this week. I think he knows that there's an opportunity here.
Yeah.
And they're certainly better than they've put themselves through so far. Having said that, though, the Cardinals have come off a big result last week. Yes, they striped the Rams mainly because not so many guys protected Matt Stafford, and to be fair, Kyler was very good last week.
Oh, Kyler was awesome, as was Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, great call making your king of the week last week.
He was my king of the week. That's exactly that. I'm glad you mentioned that before I did. Let's say 134 yards, 5 receptions through the season.
You know what? He gets the have a day. There you go.
You know who's having a day this year? Who's having a season so far? James Conner.
James Conner, what a guy!
If you got James Conner, we talk about James Conner on this pod quite a bit because we love James Conner. James Conner is as solid a fantasy running back as you are going to get. And that was proven last week with a big score. So, I think those guys there. Trey McBride, obviously, away from week 1, who wasn't great. Very good last week as well. So, big commendations for all the big guns in the Cardinals' offense. Also, big shout out to guys like Greg Dortch as well, who somehow is becoming fantasy relevant. Let's go.
Greg Dortch.
Greg Dortch. If you got Greg Dortch and Greg Dortch might be hanging around your waiver wire. If he is, I'd probably pick him up because he's got a role to play. On the other hand, the Lions, who have passed a lot but not really gone anywhere, or I say they haven't gone anywhere. There's some big yardage tables here for Jared Goff, Jameson Williams, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you've got them, you're firing them all up. You're also firing both Montgomery and Gibbs up because, as we predicted, both of them have a role to play in this offense. It's very, very, very similar between the two of them. 126 yards, 2 TDs on 28 attempts for Montgomery, and 24 attempts, 124 yards, and 1 touchdown for Gibbs. They are the same person. Montgomery's just slightly bigger dude at the goal line, but they both have a home. So again, this one could be very, very, very exciting indeed. I don't think you're going to go for either defense in this one, to be quite frank, because there's that shootout potential. But any of your skill positions, even if they're a little bit out of the normal depth, so we're talking, I think start Goff with confidence, start both Montgomery and Gibbs with confidence, start Williams and St. Brown for the Lions, Murray, Connor, Marvin Harrison and McBride, absolutely fine for the Cardinals. Outside of that, we as we mentioned, Dortch is probably a flex, I would say, especially in that matchup. And Sam Laporte, we haven't really talked about too much this season as well. I think it's probably time for him to have a bit of a breakout.
I think so. Yeah, this game feels like it's just going to be raining points everywhere. It's going to be a thunderstorm of points, which we were meant to have today but avoided. So hopefully it's somewhere over Arizona at the moment.
Absolutely. So they won't know it because they're inside, but it will be there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Play both the kickers as well, Bates and Prater, fine options in this one too.
Prater, evergreen man. Come on, he might be in the Fantasy Hall of Fame come the end of the season as well.
Quite possibly. Our next game then, we have San Francisco 49ers, who are 1-1 at the 0-2 LA Rams. The Niners got their bell rung last week in Minnesota. They're now down Debo to add to their injury worries. He's got a calf strain and probably going to miss at least a couple of weeks, certainly this week, to add to obviously Christian McCaffrey as well. Speaking of injuries, the Rams are basically just a walking corpse at this point. They were down 4, or they are down 4 O-linemen last week. So yeah, I had Stafford as my king last week, but he got pummeled into a nice paste, basically. So he didn't really do much. You can't really throw the ball when you're paced. And of course, Cooper Kupp has a high ankle sprain as well, so he's gone too. I think this game is pretty cut and dry, Chris. Of your healthy Niners, play Purdy, play Mason, play Ayuk. Keep an eye on Kittle because he had a bit of hamstring tightness, but it doesn't sound like it's too bad. So if he's out there, play Jake Moody and play the Niners D. And for the Rams, Chris, I think it's probably just Kyron or bust. Don't get too excited, and then maybe Demarcus Robinson has some weak appeal.
You got to try something if you've got a flex, but yeah, I think if you're Kyron Williams only, you're probably going to start him. He is, unfortunately, though, as a result of all the injuries and the predicted 49ers beatdown victory, my peasant of the week.
Yeah, no, I think
pains me to say it.
They might bench him. Like if this gets behind, I mean, the Niners are going to be pissed after what happened in Minnesota last week.
Yeah.
If it gets ugly, they're not going to want to keep Matt Stafford in there if they're again, because he's just going to get killed. They're not going to want to keep Kyron in there. They can just roll up Blake Corum or whoever the hell they've got. It's
just don't bother. Live to fight another day. Because they can't afford too many more injuries. But as a result, as you say, of the angry 49ers and Debo going down, I think if George Kittle plays, he is the absolute king of the week at tight end for me.
Ooh.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So I like.
He had a good week last week too.
Yeah. So yeah, keep him rolling. Him and Purdy have this relationship. It's just for him. It's staying on the field, and if he's there, he's a king.
Yeah. And I believe Jake Moody is your peasant of the week, Chris?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. That's you can use him, but yeah, they might be up. They might just be booing extra points. So yeah, I can understand why. Yeah, you would choose him as your peasant. But that's pretty cut and dry for that one. So Chris, we have the Sunday night football game next. If you'd like to take us through that one, please.
Well, absolutely. So yeah, say 2-0 KC, as we fully expected through. Well, say fully expected. Yeah, say largely expected versus the 1-1 Atlanta Falcons, who are the most deceiving team in football. Kirk Cousins. Now, we like comeback stories. There are such things, as we talked about with Aaron Rodgers earlier on. Do we like that Kirk is back? Do we want to see that? Do we want to see him transport himself down south and do his thing? I don't know. But anyway, say you're not going to start him.
No, I don't think so.
It doesn't matter. So, yeah, and I think that probably affects some of the skill positions there. I mean, say it makes guys serviceable that he's there. So Pitt's serviceable, London is serviceable. Bijan, you'd like to think he would be more than serviceable through the first few games, but here we are. KC, Pacheco went down last week. That's a big loss for them.
Yeah.
And I think finding a replacement to fill that gap will be very difficult for them.
Yep. Yeah, I'd take a week to see how this backfield shakes out because everyone's kind of gone crazy on waivers for Carson Steele, the guy that fumbled in the game and hasn't really looked great so far. They've got Samaje Perine, who has stepped in place of Joe Mixon before, and then they've obviously just signed Kareem Hunt, who again he's getting on at this point in terms of running back years, but he's obviously familiar with this Chiefs offense. Could one emerge, or are they all just going to kind of cap each other's value?
Exactly that. We've seen RB roulette there before, and we may be on that again. We shall see. But the good thing is this season that as much as that's a downer for you if you're the Pacheco owner, if you're the Rashee Rice or Xavier Worthy owner, you are loving it.
Yep.
Because finally 2 deep threats on this team.
I think even if you're sorry, go on. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, same. And Elite, finally, Patrick Mahomes has got two exciting receivers he can actually throw to rather than just throw to Kelsey for 5 yards at a time.
Yeah. And I think the running back injuries, in a weird way, well, they don't help the Chiefs, obviously. The Chiefs are a worse team, obviously, for losing Isaiah Pacheco. But if you're a fantasy owner of Patrick Mahomes, I think you're actually happy about this Pacheco injury because Mahomes has kind of settled in as this weird... fantasy-wise, I don't know. He just doesn't seem to get him well. But if they're not able to run the balls much, it's all going to have to go on Mahomes' arm. And that's when we've seen peak Mahomes, certainly fantasy-wise. So I think this actually adds to his value in a weird way.
I think you're dead right. And yeah, I'll say we don't see him maybe move as much as we have in the past, which again is a thing. But yeah, for sure, I think with these two young guys, who look very, very exciting. There's going to be certainly more of the pass game, and you'll be loving it. One thing in the pass game is that you've just got to keep your fingers crossed on, though. Travis Kelce, who knows where he's going to be, what he's going to be doing, how he's going to be functioning this week. Obviously, 4 points through 2 games is not a good return on your investment so far.
Nope.
But as Naithan mentioned, you've got to be strapping yourself in for a bit more of the pass game. So yeah, let's see on that one. So for me, that's more likely than not. I don't like Kyle Pitts in this. I think there's as much as I want to like Kyle Pitts, for some reason they just haven't used him right in 2 seasons, and I just can't see any way out of that.
In theory, is a good matchup. I mean, last week the Bengals, I think, completed passes to 3 tight ends, but like you say, it's less about the matchup and more about how the Falcons seem to use Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, and I don't trust it until I see it. I think that the Falcons are, again, don't have bang average square players. They don't. They've got very talented players in their roster, but somehow managed to make themselves seem pretty average. Whilst the Chiefs say the one thing you can probably back is that Andy Reid will have a plan and a system to combat their lack of elite running back, and I would back the Chiefs completely here.
Yeah, and Kyle Pitts is also your peasant of the week. Again,
he is.
Second week in a row. Yep.
Yeah, I think that there might be an unlucky peasant for him this week. But yeah, second week in a row because again, I think a lot of people are out there are pinning their hopes on him and just not quite seeing the returns.
No, yep, definitely. Play Harrison Butker. I don't have a great feeling about Young Wei Koo in this one, to be honest. You can play him, but I'd probably try and find a different guy if you can. And then defense-wise, you're not playing the Falcons, obviously. You could maybe play the Chiefs, but I think, again, you can probably find a better option. We'll go on to our penultimate game of the week. We have 2 Monday Night Football games this week, Chris. The first on deck is Jacksonville Jaguars, who are 0-2, going to the 2-0 Buffalo Bills. So Jacksonville obviously still haven't really got going. It's been quite a dreary start on offense for them, while the Bills have been, I think, a lot stronger than a lot of people expected. Obviously, after trading Diggs and having some losses on defense and things, they've actually looked very good. But yeah, this Jacksonville offense outside of ETN is pretty much just Blair, and this Bills defense has, as I said, been extremely good so far, much better than anyone was expecting. They've shut down some really big names like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle so far this season. For the Jags, Chris, to be honest. I'd probably sit anyone but ETN. I'm going to make Trevor Lawrence my peasant of the week because I think at the moment he is absolutely the peasant of quarterbacks, it's fair to say.
Yeah, so it definitely promises a lot, but delivering very little at the moment. I actually think these teams, on the face of it, look, and if you were to just to drop in, and this is what we don't do on this pod, but if you were to just drop in and look at the stats, they look very similar. But the story of the field tells you absolutely a different story.
Yep.
And yeah, the Bills are by far and away using the resource that they've got so much better. For me, the Jags are a strange one because I think outside of Lawrence and ETN, see Brian Thomas is emerging.
Yeah, he's looked like the most electric receiver of the lot. It's just they've kind of been sharing it around a bit, and Trevor's not played great, so it's kind of gone under the radar. Yeah,
absolutely. Whilst on the other side, the Bills clearly have a generational talent in Josh Allen, and are using him extremely well. But James Cook's been very good this season so far. Through the first two games, just shy of 150 yards on the ground and 2 TDs. That's the kind of thing that you want to see. And outside of that, a decent shake from Shakir and Coleman. So when you've got that mix where you can still win games, but your roster's not unbelievable, that shows that you've got a nice system going. I think you're right. I think fire up Allen and Kirk, Shakir and Coleman. Shakir maybe, Coleman less so. And then on the other side, yes, Lawrence and ETN with some degree of trepidation.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch Lawrence at all. Like you say, ETN, I think he's okay. But yeah, other than that, Kincaid as well. Again, he's been another one of these high-profile Titans that's not really done much. I'd probably stick with him. I think it's going to come good. I mean, last week Allen barely threw the ball at all. He didn't need to against the Dolphins there in week 1. Again, they didn't really need him either. I think at some point they'll start to get involved again. This feels like a game that the Buffalo might just win at a canter. So I don't know, but he's going to get involved in some point, I think. And that brings us to our last game then, Chris.
Oh, we're there. Finally, final Monday Night Football. And yes, absolutely. Commanders versus the Bengals. Well, yeah, two varied teams. Commanders 1-1 and the Bengals are 0-2. 0-2.
Pretty unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is quite unbelievable. And they've been very misfiring on offense so far. They have just looked devoid of ideas and lackluster through 2 weeks. But this is the week they turn it around.
Yeah. Oh yeah. This Commanders defense is just, they made the Giants so good. So
yeah. So I think the Bengals are going to look excellent this week. For me, Burrow is my QB king of the week for that very reason. I think you have to
good call.
Forget the last couple of weeks and just realise that actually this is a plum matchup which will get him going. What can I say? What can we say about the Commanders? Offensively, we thought they might be resurgent. Turns out that Jaden Daniels is all right. It turns out they can run the ball, but they can't really do a great deal more, and they certainly can't stop points coming the other way, which is a problem. So, advice to you here really is if you've got Jaden Daniels, you're gonna ride that Bronco all year. If you've got the defense after last week's game, the Giants,
find God.
Exactly. Why have you still got them? Get rid now. There's going to be someone on waivers that is significantly better. However, if you've got Brian Robinson, whack him in there. I would say that's a good one, and he's my RB king of the week amongst all of it. Because it turns out that's probably the one bright spark that they've got, and he's been excellent draft value, and you can't go wrong with that.
No.
But the Bengals are going to win.
Put all your money on the Bengals. Yeah, they're own too, but they gave the Chiefs a good game last week. Narrowly lost, and week 1. Yeah, we know they didn't play great against the Pats, and they weren't ready, but. Yeah, they're going to win this game. It's just this.
Would you like to know who the two number 1 receivers are for the Commanders this year?
Is it Diami Brown? Is he one of them?
He is not.
Oh,
He's not.
wow.
Austin Eckler is there with 99 yards receiving, 7 receptions, and Zach Ertz is second with 90.
Yeah, that's pretty
90
dire.
yards and
That
7
brings me on nicely to making Terry McLaurin my peasant of the week. I
Yeah.
still like Terry for the season when they get it going a bit more in the passing game, but just, yeah, as you say, it's been pretty putrid passing-wise so far. Daniels doesn't need that to have value because of the rushing element of his game, but fade every pass catching option, I think, like you're basically suggesting, Chris. And play every pass catching option for the Bengals because, play Chase. He's going to erupt this week. His neighbours just abused them, so it's probably they're going to have to censor what Chase does to them when they broadcast this game. T. Higgins should be back as well, so if he is, I think you can probably chuck him in. And if you need a tight end, I think even Gesicki could have some appeal. Play Zach Moss, don't play Chase Brown because it seems to be Moss's backfield. But and play the Evan McPherson and the Bengals D too, I would say.
Play them all. We're gonna play all the Bengals. Gesicki somehow out of nowhere is the receiving leader for the Bengals. So fire him up.
That's very bizarre.
Fire the dude up.
Very bizarre.
Everywhere he goes, he seems to get fantasy points.
Yep. Well, he is a receiving tight end, so I suppose that makes sense. That brings us to the end of the preview. So to summarise mine and Chris's Kings and Peasants. So on my team, I've got Geno Smith, Zach Charbonnet, Chris Godwin, Brock Bowers, Daniel Carlson, and the Bucks D as my Kings, and Trevor Lawrence, Devin Singletary, Terry McLaurin, Mark Andrews, Jason Sanders, and the Chargers D as my Peasants. For Chris, we have Joe Burrow, Brian Robinson, Devontae Adams, George Kittle, Cameron Dicker, Browns D, as the Kings, and on the Peasants, Justin Herbert, Kyron Williams, Mike Evans, Kyle Pitts, Jake Moody, and the Vikings defense. So some big names on your Peasants team this week, Chris. But
big names, absolutely. But I think warranted.
I've got to get a win here somewhere, so hopefully it comes through for me this week. Right. That's that. Let's go on to 20 questions. Right, I guessed correctly last week, Chris. You got Chris Johnson, so we are both 1-0 in this one, so I'm keeping up with this one at least. It is your turn again to guess the player for this week. I have a player in mind for you, and you have 20 questions and a guess to figure out who it is.
Here we go. Right then, first guess then, I suppose, is this player on offense?
Yes.
Good. NFC or AFC?
I can only answer yes or no, but I will tell you...
AFC!
Are you asking the team he predominantly played for was AFC?
I'm going to go with predominantly played for his AFC.
No.
Okay. NFC. Okay. Is this player who is obviously on offense... And in the NFC, is this player a quarterback?
Yes.
Ooh,
nice guess.
Ooh, QB NFC. Did this player play this decade?
Yes.
After 4, okay, this decade. Does this player play for an East Coast team?
Are you asking specifically for the NFC?
For the NFC on the East Coast?
No.
Okay. That was 5.
So.
Is this player still active?
Yes. Active offense quarterback, predominantly played for a team in the NFC, but not the NFC East.
Does this player now play in green?
Yes.
Is this player Aaron Rodgers?
You got it in 7. Nice. It is indeed Aaron Rodgers, yeah. I thought I'd throw in an active player there and maybe try and trip you up with Brett Favre or something like that, because they obviously followed the same path, which was hilarious. That exact same thing happened. Aged, Brett Favre gets traded to the New York Jets. He obviously went on to play for the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see if Aaron Rodgers goes that route or not. But Aaron Rodgers obviously traded to the New York Jets as well a couple of years ago. But he was obviously drafted in, I think it was 2005, sorry, by the Green Bay Packers to sit behind Aaron Rodgers. And I mean, the face on draft day, Chris, was hilarious. Everyone's seen the videos of him sat there waiting around. Alex Smith goes number 1 overall, and he's like, why is this clown going ahead of me? And he has to wait until, I think it was like pick 23 or something. He had to wait a hot minute there until he was picked. He did go to the Green Bay eventually. He had to sit for a couple of years behind Brett Favre, who understandably, because he was an all-time great as well. But when he came in, it was pretty much lightning from the second he came in, I think, Chris. He's just such an exciting player early in his career. Everybody knows the absolute quintessential, if you jump offside, or give him a free play. That hard count, firstly, it's the hard count he has. The inflections that he does with his voice to get the defense to jump offside, yes. And then if you give him a free play, he will absolutely abuse you to no end. The amount of touchdowns he's scored, I think, off of penalty or free plays in the NFL, he must have the record. But just a phenomenal quarterback in his day, wasn't he, Chris?
He's a phenomenal quarterback now.
Oh, he's still good. Yeah.
For me, Aaron Rodgers was part of that mid 2000s. Trifecta of QBs that included Peyton Manning, and Brady, who were absolutely the elite of the sport at the time. You could probably argue that Russell Wilson was approaching that for a while. Maybe Cam was approaching that for a while, but none got to the level that those three guys did, both in real life and in fantasy for such a long time. For me, Aaron Rodgers is one of my favourite players ever. I think. Not only for the what he was able to do with Green Bay, often with less than ideal skill position players, because a lot of the time he had a lot of randos playing with him that he managed to get to a certain level, but or to an elite level, more to the point. But also his contribution to the league over such a long period of time, and also his dedication to his position as well. There's a reason why he's still playing at 40 and still playing at an elite level at 40. He can come back from an injury such as the one he had last year. So a lot of people think that he's a pretty strange guy and has got a lot of strange methods in doing things, but each to their own. I actually don't. I respect the fact that he does things a little bit differently. Does that with a bit of personality that comes across occasionally. You see him in interviews and stuff. Say he's certainly a thinking man's QB.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the reason why I'm drawn to him in that way. But at his peak he could do it all. Say he could throw elite. He could, as you say, think about the game at an elite level, but also move as well. So many ways.
Oh, he had wheels. Yeah, back in the day, he was quite nimble. He's not like what you would think of like a Russian quarterback, like a Newton or like a Jaden Daniels now, or like a Lamar, but he could absolutely scramble and was fairly quick.
Surprising amount of rushing yards in his career, I think, as you probably see there. So, in terms of legends of the sport, I think he's there. I would love to see him win again before he's out, but I'm not sure that's going to happen, especially now he's playing with the Jets. But that would be a very Aaron Rodgers type thing to do, wouldn't it? Go to the Jets, turn them around, win and retire, and then go and host Jeopardy.
Yep, do what Brett could not do, and don't defraud the state of Missouri of all of their money either. Like you said, and that when you were speaking there, like obviously, like you said, he played in the heyday of Manning and Brady, and he was obviously absolutely in that conversation. But just you hit on a nail on a nerve a bit there. That he's only won it once. He won it in 2010, that Green Bay season, and a lot of the story of his career has been. I don't think it's really so much on him. I think it's more on Mike McCarthy, but they did not maximize Aaron Rodgers. I don't think having, like you say, they didn't necessarily put the best players around him. I mean, when they took Jordan Love in, I think it was it the 2020 draft, whatever one it was, 2020, 2021. Instead of taking some weapons to help Aaron Rodgers, that was one of the talking points of the day, and that's kind of the story of his career. They've never really they never really made it a point like some teams did, like with the Patriots did with Brady, certainly later in Brady's career, or like the Broncos did with Manning, to absolutely get him and stack up the talent around him. They never really did that for him. And yeah, he got the one, but they never even really came particularly close to getting a second. But he was still, as you say, such a phenomenal quarterback. His touchdown high 48 in 2020. Obviously, that's quite late in his career there as well. Yeah, phenomenal quarterback. And I mean, we're lucky to still be able to see him, because he is sort of the last relic of that golden quarterback era that you spoke about, with loads of other guys like Big Ben and things like that as well. He is the last of them, and we certainly don't have too many more years of him, you would think. So yeah, enjoy it while it lasts, Jet fans. So
he might be the best thing that's happened to your franchise in, well, forever.
Probably, possibly, yeah, certainly since the 70s anyway. So that brings us to the end of the LOC Fantasy Show this week. So if you, like I said at the top, if you have a question that you want to ask on a particular player, game, or anything, for either the recap or the preview shows, please, or yeah, if you've got a player you want to submit for 20 questions so we can try and guess who it is together, or well, one of us anyway, let us know by emailing LOCFantasyShow@gmail.com, or reaching out on social media, LOC Fantasy Show Facebook page, our LOC Fantasy Show, or you LOC_fantasy_show, at LOC Fantasy Show on X and on Instagram as well, and on TikTok, LOC.fantasy.show. Yeah, that is it. Thank you for joining us again, Chris.
Well, welcome, and I'm really pleased to be here. This has been another good show, and I hope that after all of this, this helps some of you sort your teams out for the week ahead, and hopefully it does some good as well. And if it does, and you want to give us some feedback, please do let us know, because we are new to this game.
Yep.
Widespread, but we aren't used to this game. Looking at people's fantasy. We've done this for so long, but we want to know what you want to see. And if you want to see something more, let us know. If you like what we do, even better. Do let us know.
Here. So with that, I will finish off by wishing you a great weekend. Best of luck in your matchups, unless you're playing me, of course. Goodbye, everybody.